Hi, I'm Kelly with Penn State Pesticide Education. Today, we're going to be showing you how to replicate and execute our LD50 demonstration. The LD50 demonstration illustrates how the toxicity is determined for a pesticide. With pesticides, there's an important equation to remember. Hazard, or the risk, equals toxicity times exposure. Of that equation, you are able to control your exposure by wearing the proper personal protective equipment.
There are four main routes of pesticide exposure: skin or dermal, oral, inhalation, or through the eyes. Wearing the appropriate personal protective equipment when mixing, loading, and applying pesticides can help to reduce the hazard of pesticides. While you can control your exposure to reduce risk, the other part of that equation, toxicity, is determined by an LD50 value. LD stands for lethal dose. The LD50 is the dose of a toxin required to kill 50% of the population of test animals under a standard set of conditions. LD50 values are determined through exposing the active ingredient to the test population. Once a 50% mortality rate is reached in the test population, the LD50 value is assigned. For our demonstration, we are going to replicate how LD50 values would be determined for an acute oral exposure. Our participants will serve as our animal test population, while chocolate candy will mimic the doses of the raw active ingredient. Our test population, the participants, will consume the active ingredient, the candy. We will be monitoring to reach the 50% mortality rate. For our demonstration, that will be when 50% of our participants have eaten all their candy. Please note, you want to have an even number of participants for this demonstration, so you are able to easily identify the 50% rate. You will also need plastic cups to hold the chocolate candy. Let's set up for our demonstration.
You'll want to take your plastic cups and be sure that you have an even number of plastic cups, and take your chocolate candies and fill the cups with varying amounts of the chocolate candy. So some can be fuller than others. And we're using plastic cups that have lids, which are convenient if you're going to do this, to do your material preparation and then actually do the presentation in the future. But you can also use other types of plastic cups. So really any type of plastic cup that's able to contain your chocolate candies. Okay, once you have the two materials of your plastic cups and chocolate candy prepared, you're going to have your group of participants come to the front. And like we said, you want to make sure you have an even number of participants. You'll distribute the plastic cups to the participants, have them take the lids off, and have them start eating the candy. Now tell them they can eat the candy at their own pace, and your participants will begin to eat the candy. And you'll want to tell your participants, as soon as they're done eating their candy, they're going to sit down.
In our demonstration, we are replicating how a LD50 value is determined. Once 50% of our participants have finished eating their candy, that would be our 50% mortality rate. We had 4 participants, so our 50% mortality rate would be 2. Once you reach the 50% mark with your participants, have the other half stop eating and explain the concept behind the LD50 value. Tell participants how the LD50 is the dose of a toxin required to kill 50% of the population of test animals.
In the laboratory setting with the test population, the LD50 is strictly measured in terms of the product being given to the test subject, in terms of the calculations being taken on their exposure.
This includes recording the milligrams of toxin per kilogram of a body weight of the test animal.
But for the basis of this presentation, we just want to make sure that you're grasping the concept of the LD50 value. In the laboratory setting, the LD50 value is determined by the amount of product that the test population has consumed. So if they consume very little of the product and 50% of the test population has been fatally exposed, that makes for a very low LD50 number, which translates into a product that has a danger poison signal word. So in short, it didn't take long for the amount of 50% of the test population to be exposed, which means that the product is probably very toxic and very poisonous. So hence you need to have a danger poison signal word. The LD50 values are extremely important. The higher the LD50 value, the lower the toxicity of a product. The lower the LD50 value of a product, the higher the toxicity of a product. These LD50 values are very important to determine the toxicity and then determine the signal words that are placed on the product label.
Remember the equation: hazard or risk equals toxicity times exposure. The toxicity of a product is determined through a LD50 value. You can help to control your exposure and hence reduce the hazard of a product through wearing personal protective equipment and following appropriate procedures.